both significant weaknesses and both significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. This is the adverse opinion column. Both significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. So everyone got that? What was what was choice C for column 1, the audit committee?
Material weaknesses, but not significant deficiencies.
Okay, and for the adverse opinion column?
Both significant.
Go ahead. Deficiencies and material weaknesses, okay? Choice D. For the first column, on audit, at least there'll be no surprises. When you go to the first column about the audit committee, both significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, both significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, that would be the audit committee column. And the adverse opinion column, you probably are predicting it, and the adverse opinion column, material weaknesses, but not significant deficiencies. Material weaknesses, but not significant deficiencies. So notice choice C and D have the same results, but they're reversed. Choice D again, audit committee column, both significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. And column 2, adverse opinion column, material weaknesses, but not significant deficiencies.
There's too much.
I know, tell me about it. These are not the questions I would have asked if I were writing the exam. All right, possibility 2, question 4.
Okay, wait. Okay.
Which of the following expressions most likely would be included? Which of the following expressions would most likely be included in a management representation letter? In a management representation letter. So which of the following expressions would most likely be included in a management representation letter? That was from last Saturday, remember, that's chapter 24. Choice A. Now remember, this is coming from management to the auditor. We don't intend to provide any information. I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to give you the whole thing, it's too damn much typing. We don't intend to provide any information that would waive the attorney-client privilege. That would waive the attorney-client privilege. Privilege. There's a little bit longer, but that's the gist of it. Choice B. There are no significant deficiencies in internal control. Deficiencies in internal control identified during the prior year's audit. Identified during the prior year's audit. Of which those charged with governance, are unaware. Oh my God. That's exact. Let me read it again, please, Bill. There are no significant deficiencies in internal control identified during the prior year's audit, of which those charged with governance are unawares. No, let me comment on that. Normally, items related to internal control are not in the management representation letter. That should tell you something. Choice C. That's right. You know my lingo right now. Choice C. Certain computer files and other information may exist only for a short period of time. May exist only for a short period of time and are only in computer readable form. May exist only for a short period of time and are only in computer readable form. Which means I guess they go away after a certain period of time. Kind of like putting something in trash in your Yahoo mail folder and automatically they'll expunge it after a certain time period. And choice D, No events have occurred subsequent to the balance sheet date. No events have occurred subsequent to the balance sheet date that require adjustment to. No events have occurred subsequent to the balance sheet date that require adjustment to or disclosure in, adjustment to or disclosure in the financial statements.
Why does that have to be there?
I think you'll know what the answer is, won't you? One of those looks very similar to the management representation letter that was in the chapter. And the third and final possibility for problem 4, and this again starts off the same, but the answers are different. Which of the following should be included in a written representation for management? In other words, what should be included in a management representation letter? Now this is different. This is a little different.
I'm glad this is the end of page 1.
No, there's one more question. There's 5. So the pain isn't over yet. Choice A. The belief that financial statements are completely accurate in all respects. The belief that financial statements are completely accurate in all respects. This is a strange question. Which of the following should be included, in other words, in the management representation letter? Choice A, the belief that financial statements are completely accurate in all respects. Choice B, the belief that misstatements identified by the auditor and corrected. The belief that misstatements identified by the auditor and corrected are material. The belief that misstatements identified by the auditor and corrected are material. Notice they've been corrected. Adjusting entries were made.
By material?
Are material.
Oh, are material.
Right. They've been adjusted in the financials. Choice C, the belief that the auditor is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements in conformity with GAAP. The belief that the auditor is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements in conformity with GAAP.
Okay.
The belief that the auditor is responsible for the fair presentation of the financials in accordance with GAAP. And choice D, the belief that misstatements identified by the auditor and not corrected, the belief that misstatements identified by the auditor and not corrected are immaterial. Now, problem 5, the last on this sheet, 3 possibilities. Which of the following would an auditor consider a significant deficiency in internal control? Which of the following would an auditor consider a significant deficiency in internal control that need to be communicated? Which of the following would be most likely considered a significant deficiency in internal control to be communicated to management, etc.? There's more phrases that I don't want to give you. Okay, 4 possibilities, 5 points.
To management, right?
to management, and they have more, and those in charge of the governance of internal control, but that's, you don't have to write that down. Choice A, management's failure to renegotiate, unfavorable, management's failure to renegotiate unfavorable long-term purchase commitments. Management's failure to renegotiate unfavorable long-term purchase commitments. Let me just ask a question. What does that have to do with internal control?
Nothing.
Nothing, all right.
I was wondering
There
if,
you go.
I was
You know
wondering if
what-
I heard that right.
You
I
know
was
what
like,
to do. All right, choice B. Evidence of a lack of objectivity. Evidence of a lack of objectivity by those responsible. Evidence of a lack of objectivity by those responsible for accounting decisions. For those responsible for accounting decisions. That's B. C. Management's current plans to reduce its ownership equity in the entity. Management current plans to reduce its ownership equity in the entity. In the entity.
Oh,
In the entity. That's weird, I know. I guess it means like the CEOs, et cetera, are going to reduce their ownership interest by selling off some of their stock or something. Choice D, recurring operating losses that may indicate going concern problems. Recurring operating losses that may indicate going concern problems. All right, that was problem 5, possibility 1. Problem 5, possibility 2. Okay, an auditor would most likely be concerned with internal controls. An auditor would most likely be concerned with internal controls that provide reasonable assurance. An auditor would most likely be concerned with internal controls that provide reasonable assurance about the
about who?
THE. And then there's a colon again. Now we go to A through D.
Got it.
There you go. They're not all multiple choice, by the way. Bill has to do some other grading besides this, but there are more multiple choice on the other 2 pages with other problems. Choice A, methods of assigning production tasks to employees. Methods of assigning production tasks to employees. In other words, who's going to go to machine A and who's going to go to machine B? Choice B, appropriate prices the entity should charge for its products. Appropriate prices that your client, in other words, they use the term the entity, it means your client, should charge for its products. Choice C, efficiency of management decision-making process. Efficiency of management decision-making process.
Was that for the last question or for the question before? That little, I don't know.
That was for choice B.
Okay.
What price should be charged? What does that have to do with internal control? No, so that was for choice B.
What was it?
Choice C was efficiency of management's decision-making process. And choice D, the entity, in other words, the client's ability to process, in other words, the client or entities' ability to process and summarize financial data. In other words, how well the client processes and summarizes financial data.
So the question was, an auditor would most likely be concerned with internal controls that provide reasonable assurance that...
And then A, B, C, D.
Okay.
And the last possibility for problem 5 in the end of page 1. Which is the best way to compensate? Well, this is a little different. Which is the best way to compensate for the lack of adequate segregation of duties? Which is the best way to compensate for the lack of adequate segregation of duties in a small organization? Which is the best way to compensate for the lack of adequate segregation of duties in a small organization? And 4 answers. I told you, Letitia, it'd be painful. I told you.
I see.
I told you. I knew it's painful for me up here too. Choice A, replacing personnel every 3 or 4 years. Replacing personnel every 3 or 4 years.
Is that even legal?
Sure.
Yeah.
No problem with that.
Why would you want your turnover rate to be?
Yeah, I was going to say that high, right?
Well, you know, they can move around in the organization. They can look for employees.
Oh, I mean, moving them around.
Yeah, that
Okay,
just
that would be.
graduation.
But I got the idea here that we're just letting them go. Choice B, allowing for greater management oversight. Allowing for greater management oversight of incompatible activities. Allowing for greater management oversight of incompatible activities. Choice C, disclosing lack of segregation of duties. Disclosing lack of segregation of duties to the external auditors during the annual review. Disclosing lack of segregation of duties to the external auditors during the annual review. And choice D, this is a little different, choice D, requiring accountants to pass a yearly background check. Requiring accountants to pass a yearly background check. Right.
You know what I hate?
Make you pass the CPA exam a second time? Oh God, no.
Well, they do it for financials. They make, when you go into a role, sometimes they check your credit again and your background just to make sure you haven't done anything.
Oh, that's interesting. I never had, well, maybe they did it. I just wasn't aware of it.
Yeah,
They may have done it again.
yeah.
I worked at several companies for 8-9 years. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah,
To
now.
make sure
right?
you don't have any illegal activity with wire payments and stuff.
you mean now they might find out about my underworld connection?
Yep. Yep.
And association with racketeers. All right, now I made some changes on page 2, so I'm going to look at my most recent ones. All right, now get ready for the big time. These problems are worth more, and they're not multiple choice.
Okay, is this a 1 again?
Problem 1, possibility 1,
Oh. Page 2, problem.
page 2, 19 points. 19, weird number, 19 points. Okay, basically for possibility 1, problem 1, 19 points, page 2. What standard, I'm going to try and condense it. Explain the standards of field work you have to adhere to and why. The standards of field work you have to adhere to and why. If I recall, isn't that in chapter 2?
Sure.
Standards of field work.
Okay.
Now I changed the next problem because I didn't understand it. I couldn't find the answer. The second possibility, I could not find the answer myself. So I changed it to, so this is Bill's. Please explain the general standards and the standards of reporting. I think they're on the same page as the standards of fieldwork. Please explain the general standards and the standards of reporting. What are they and why must they be adhered to? The general standards and standards of reporting, what are they and why must they be adhered to? That was not the question they had in there. They had something. If I can't find the answer, I think that thing stinks. Now, to me, for possibility 1 and possibility 2, I'm referring to page 35, table 2-3. Page 35, table 2-3.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the third possibility, though, I left in 35, page 35.
Table 2-3, right?
Yeah, you'll see it right there.
Okay. And can we, Bill, ask the question? Can we, for the answer, copy and paste or no?
That's fine with me. Fine, if you can get it to work in the exam, that's
Okay.
fine. I am not going to charge
So
you.
wait, I'm sorry, never mind.
There were 3 sections of that table. 2 of them will be for the
So
one problem.
Chapter 2,
One of
page
them will be.
35, table 2.3, is that what?
I think that's what, I forget the table number I just gave, but, and I closed Joan's text. Okay, possibility 3, this one that they left in here, I don't have an answer to this. You will have to discover one. They refer to chapter 2. So this one you'll have to look up. What is the relationship between the U.S. and the international auditing standards?
Oh.
What is the relationship between the U.S. and the international
Accounting
auditing standards?
I hate that question.
I don't like it either.
Every class I'm in, they ask that, and I hate
All right, well, there it is. If you can find the old answer, Amanda, go ahead and use it.
Oh, standards. Let me make sure I write this one.
Yeah, it's the U.S. and the international auditing standards.
Oh, boy.
Somebody in the undergraduate tax class talked about the International Revenue Service. Who the hell is that? I think she just typed it wrong. All right, problem 2. 19 points, possibility 1.
Okay.
They basically want to say, what would your client have to do? What would your client have to do for a CPA to justify an unqualified opinion? For a CPA to justify, notice using the old term, unqualified opinion. Now, I think there's something that I found in the textbook that I'm looking for there.
Is this 19 points as well?
Yep.
19 points again. These are 19. Now, for me, because I'm grading it, there is no model answer. It just says see chapter 3. What I'm looking for is page 48. Page 48, the 5 items at the bottom of the page. Page 48, the 5 items at the bottom of the page. All statements, etc., down through there are no circumstances requiring. That's what, if you put that down, we'll both be happy. Possibility 2. Oh my God.
Bill, it never works out good when you say, oh my God.
Well, this one is so much harder.
Oh, geez.
They give you an audit report, and it says there are at least 17 deficiencies. Identify at least 5 of the deficiencies. Well, maybe it's not that bad if there's 17 deficiencies at least. They want you to identify at least 5 of them. You might want to give me more than 5 in case I don't agree with one of yours.
Okay, so it's 17.
There's at least 17 deficiencies, and basically identify at least 5. Now, there was a homework problem in chapter 3 that this reminds me of a little bit. It's obviously not the same question. But there was a problem in Chapter 3. Let me look it up. That's why I brought Joan's book with me today. Okay, that reminds me a little bit of this. And that was problem 3-27. I mean, that's not the same, but that a little bit like it, maybe. And then there were deficiencies in a problem I didn't assign. That was problem 3-32. So basically, it's just they give you an audit report and it's missing some stuff, or it's got inappropriate language.
Well, we can find it in Chapter 3, right?
It uses the content of Chapter 3. It uses the content of Chapter 3, but it's much more difficult than the other possibilities.
And I'll probably get that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, those who are unlucky will get it. All right, third possibility, question 2, page 2. Okay, here's a guy who did an audit. He's determined that an unqualified opinion is to be issued, but he wants, oh, I see. He wants to issue an unqualified opinion, but he might have to expand on the rationale. He might have to expand on the rationale for the unqualified opinion. Now, I wouldn't know what that meant yet, so I have another sentence.
On the qualified opinion?
Unqualified, but he wants to expand. Here's the question.
Oh.
Please describe the 5 situations. Please describe the 5 situations in which an explanatory paragraph, please describe the 5 situations in which an explanatory paragraph would be necessary in an unqualified opinion. Please describe the 5 situations in which an explanatory paragraph would be necessary in an unqualified opinion. It looks to me like they are on page 51 at the bottom. Page 51. I see 5 dots.
5 dots.
And then an explanation of each of the dots. Okay. That's problem 2. Okay, and this page has 5 questions. So we're moving along here.
What page are we on? I'm sorry.
Now we're back to the problem 3,
okay.
Possibility 1.
Got it.
I can't give you more specifics on this one, but basically, there's 2 separate parts, really. There's 2 factual situations, and they want you to indicate if the CPA's actions would impair his independence. Would the CPA's actions impair his independence, and explain why or why not?
Actions.
Would impair his independence.
So the question is just, will the CPA actions impair his independence?
Yes, and it'd be like, first dot says like, he accepted an extravagant gift of a new auto. Possibility B is he owns stock in the company he's auditing. It'll be something like that. And the second possibility is very similar to that. So the 2 of the possibilities are rather similar. You have to explain if there is a violation of the independence or not. Why, if there is. Why not, if there isn't. And there's 2 separate little dots, like it's 2 separate parts. You have to identify each one.
Okay, so explain if there's a violation.
And if so, why? Or if there's no violation, why not? The third possibility Reminds me of a multiple choice question, so it means it's going to be a lot of writing. There's 4 situations. And you're supposed to indicate, I guess it's not multiple, you got to identify every, all right. You have to just talk about each one. Indicate for each of the 4 situations, so I was mistaken, why or why not there would be a violation of the professional ethical standards. So 4 situations, I'll give you the 4. Get your hand or fingertips ready. 4 situations, identify on each one why or why not there would be an ethical violation.
Hang on 1 second.
Get ready, this is lengthy. Oh, we're doing great on time. Make sure
But
this.
our fingers are not.
I know.
Sure everybody.
I knew it was, I warned you though.
You did.
But just think, Saturday, you'll have taken the exam. You can go out and have fun, sleep in,
What is
whatever
that?
you want to do. Yeah, what's that?
What's
I know.
that?
I've got 2 other exams.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Hey, there's no break in between turns. I'm already working on the 429
And my
class.
son has activities, so what's that?
Yes, I know. All right, this is situation 1. You got to identify all 4 of them and talk about them. Situation 1, expressed an unmodified opinion. Notice they're using new language now. Expressed an unmodified opinion on the current year's financials. They expressed an unmodified opinion on the current year's financials when audit fees for the prior year's audit, were unpaid.
Of course.
Unpaid. So they did a new audit, give an unmodified or unqualified opinion, and they hadn't been paid for last year's audit.
The thing, though, about that is, they're obviously not holding it against them. If they,
but
I know you're not supposed to, but like.
Yes, that's it. I have a practical question. That is one where there would be a violation. That's in the text. But why would you be an idiot
And do it.
to do a net audit when you haven't gotten paid for the old audit?
And give them a glowing review.
Yes. All right, so that is a violation, but do you have to have a sentence explaining why? They refer to that in the text, I remember under 101 or something. Number 2, situation 2, recommended a controller's position description. You recommended a controller's position description with candidate specifications. You recommended a controller's position description with candidate specifications to an audit client. In other words, an audit client says, what should we be looking for when we're trying to fill our controller's position? And you probably said, this is what I would include as the requirements for the job.
Oh, hold on.
That's what I assume they're saying, but I'm putting it in English.
In the job description?
Yeah, basically you're telling them what to put in the job description, but they use loftier language. That's what it meant to me.
Thank you.
But when you read it on the exam, it has this slowing language.
And that's not a problem, right?
Probably not, but you'll have to decide.
Oh,
that.
right, sorry.
Situation 3. Oh, you're anxious. There's nothing wrong with that. Situation 3. Purchase a CPA firm's practice of monthly write-ups. You purchase a CPA firm's practice of monthly write-ups for a percentage of fees. Now notice it doesn't say in this question that you're doing an audit. So I assume you're not doing an audit.
So you're not gonna mark me wrong?
Well, you're not doing an audit here. It just said you're a practicing CPA. This is the way some of you, by the way, if you want to set up your own practice, I don't like doing this kind of work, but you can make a living just going around to the Hallmark shop, the local 7-Eleven, once a month and doing their books and doing their sales tax returns.
So,
I know it's boring work, but I mean, it's a regular source of income.
firm.
And I'm assuming here privately held companies that aren't publicly traded.
So Bill, I want to make sure I have this.
Yes.
Purchase a CPA firm practice.
Doing monthly write-up work. In other words, what are you buying from that old CPA? Their client list. You're buying their client list and you're going around to local firms and doing their financial statements, and you charge a percentage for a percentage of the fees. And the fourth situation, you made arrangements with a financial institution to collect notes issued by a client. You made arrangements with a bank, I guess, a financial institution, to collect notes issued by a client in payment of fees due for the current year's audit. I better repeat that. Made arrangements with a financial institution to collect notes issued by a client in payment of fees that are due for the current year's audit.
I feel like that was gonna be a hard one.
That's hard. By the way, that I don't quite understand that number 4. It's not a violation, but come up with some hogwash reason, I'll accept it. I don't quite understand it. Well, you got the note receivable because it's payment of the audit. Well, you're gonna, well, never mind.
I hope I don't get done because I don't understand that one either.
Yeah.
Jesus.
All right. Problem 4. Again, 19 points. Several possibilities. Okay, it says you're a CPA. You just completed you set up your own firm. Your physician audit client, whom you just issued to, I guess for which you just issued an unqualified opinion. So you audited a physician and you gave an unqualified opinion, and you just discovered that his accountant has been stealing $300,000 per year from the medical practice, and you did not detect that. So this happened at the Glen Ellen Clinic, I remember. Only I don't know if they had an audit. You did an audit of the clinic, you gave them a clean report, you never discovered anything, and now you find out that their accountant was stealing $300,000 that you failed to detect. You did warn the managing partner. That there was not adequate internal controls. That there was inadequate internal controls. Are you liable? Are you liable? Explain your defense. Explain your defense and possible legal liability. Need to talk about this one, I think. I want to discuss this because the answer they have down here, for me, is not the right answer. The answer they have down here is how can you minimize legal liability? Well, this has already happened. So let's discuss it because Bill's doing the grading and not necessarily using the model answer. I mean, the model answer is great if it were a different question. What can you do to minimize your legal liability? But that's not what they're saying here. So it looks to me like you audited a client and you gave him a clean opinion, and it turns out you did, maybe this is a CYA, you did warn the managing partner, I assume here, of the medical practice, that they had inadequate internal controls. Now I assume the client wants to sue you. The client wants to sue you. What is your possible liability? What are your defenses? Well, what I think you need to do here is discuss negligence and gross negligence. Now, just because there's something that was not detected, does that mean that you were negligent?
No.
Not necessarily, so you need to build that up. Maybe you can use the defense of contributory negligence. Now, these are my ideas, not theirs. Contributory negligence because who did the stealing? Their accountant, and they had inadequate internal controls. Who had inadequate internal controls? The client. So maybe you could do a contributory negligence defense and say you were not negligent because you're not guaranteeing that there was nothing wrong. Is there gross negligence? Certainly not. You didn't do anything flagrant. There's certainly no fraud on your part. Now, I would also mention the breach of contract cause of action, because there, the auditor and the client are both signatures to the client. But again, I would try to argue, and I'm not guaranteeing you'll win. I would try to argue that there was no breach of contract because you did perform your duties adequately. Now, that's subject to the judge or the jury. But I would bring up some issues of that type. This model answer is fine, but it doesn't address those facts.
So we can just put on here.
Yeah, so, right, yeah, it's something like that. All right, that's one possibility.
That's a long one.
The next possibility says, what are 5 steps the auditor could take to minimize legal liabilities?
Okay.
To minimize legal liability.
Audit is 5.
We're asking for 5 steps.
Guys, I know you're gonna kill me. Will we be able to take a 5-minute break? I have to use the washroom so bad.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I do as well.
Yeah, take a break right now.
Could we-
I want to look at this one a little bit more because they've got some pages here.